My moment of impact was when I was in middle school and went to the Soviet Union, and an older Russian woman tapped me on the shoulder and she asked, "Why do you hate us so much? Why do you want war with us? Why don't you want peace?"
Today's impactful guest is Dave Santulli. Dave is the founder of United Planet, its president for nearly a quarter century, and now the Chairman Emeritus of United Planet, which we're going to talk about a lot in this episode. Dave pioneered and created the concept of relational diplomacy described in his excellent book, Relational Diplomacy: Innovations in Peace Building, a case study of Cyprus. Dave holds degrees from Loyola, University of Maryland, St. Louis University of Madrid in Spain, the Fletcher School of Tufts University, and executive education degrees from the Fletcher School and from Harvard University. Truly a global leader, Dave speaks multiple languages, including Italian, Japanese, Russian, and Spanish. And drumroll, please. He has been to 283 out of a possible 330 countries and territories on planet Earth, and has not yet been to Mars, as far as I know. Welcome, Dave. I am so honored to have you on the pod today.
It's wonderful to be here, Katy. Thank you for the opportunity.
Excellent. Listeners, viewers, here's a message to you. What we're bringing you today is a chance to hear from that rarity of men, a person who founded a not-for-profit from scratch to create a better world by helping people see their shared humanity and build on it. A dreamer who didn't just dream, but took action. Someone who founded and sustained a transformational organization for nearly a quarter century. And someone who has extensively traveled the world, 283 countries and territories, and built lasting relationships everywhere he went. So needless to say, we will fill your metaphorical cup with actionable takeaways today. But we're also going to flip the script on you, listeners and viewers. What are your takeaways? What parts of Dave's story resonate with you? And what action is he inspiring you to take? Engage with us by commenting, liking, and sharing this episode, and reach out to us at katy@katyhansell.com, because we want to hear from you, Dave and I both. All right, Dave, what is your moment of impact?
My moment of impact was when I was in middle school and went to the Soviet Union. I was sitting at the Bolshoi Theater in Moscow, and an older Russian woman tapped me on the shoulder, and she asked, "Why do you hate us so much? Why do you want war with us? Why don't you want peace?" And that was my moment of impact.
Wow. I can't imagine that. So how old were you at the time?
Around 13 years old.
Wow.
With a school group, I was in a Russian class, one of the few Russian classes they had at public schools in Maryland at the time. So I was very fortunate that my school had one. And we went on an exchange program to Russia and Uzbekistan.
That's incredible. So what went through your mind at the moment when you put yourself, here you are at the Bolshoi, the most famous ballet company in the world, about to see a magnificent performance, I can only imagine, and you're not expecting this to happen. What goes through your mind at the time?
It was my first ballet. We were way up on the seventh heaven, the very top row of balconies, incredibly beautiful theater. And I felt this tap on my shoulder and turned around. And this older woman had a very stern look on her face. And at first she asked, "Are you American?" And I said, "Yes." And then she went about to ask us questions. And I was, I guess, very shocked. I was speechless. It took me a minute to gather the courage to respond. And I tried my best to encourage her and say, "No, we want peace too. We don't want war." She just kind of stared at me. I'm not sure if it registered, but then the lights went out and the show began, and I never saw her again.
That's such a transformational moment. And you can see the antecedents of you becoming a global peace builder in that moment. That I think you said, 13 years old? I don't know if I had that right, that you had the presence of mind to actually say, no, I'm anti-war. I'm here because I'm interested in Russia and I'm studying it at school, Russian. And so what happened after you got home and you reflected on it? I guess let me take a second and just sort of, I don't want to turn this into an episode of the TV show The Americans, although I could, because I'm obsessed with Kerry Russell and Matthew Rhys, and that show takes place, it's a dramatization of what happens during the Cold War. And for people not familiar, I'm surmising that this was during the Cold War that you went on this trip. Is that
Yes.
correct, Dave?
Yes.
Okay,
It was the tail end of the Cold War, while the Soviet Union still existed.
Yeah. So the Cold War defines the era roughly from, correct me if I'm wrong, World War II up to 1991, when the USSR, the Soviet Union, becomes dissolved. And there's this massive geopolitical friction between the Western capitalist bloc and the Eastern communist bloc. And we introduced this concept of an Iron Curtain, where Germany is divided in half between West and East Germany. We later see the Berlin Wall fall, and that's what that's a reference to. And Eastern Europe is also tucked behind this metaphorical Iron Curtain. There's all kinds of proxy wars. There's a space race. There's an arms race with conventional weapons, and very terrifyingly, with nuclear weapons. And this is after World War II, so the world has already seen what happened when the U.S. bombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki. We have the Vietnam War, and we have the Cuban Missile Crisis, which, look it up if you're not familiar, but that is the first time that we had the threat of missiles, conventional, possibly nuclear, within a striking radius of the United States. So for this elderly Russian woman to be fearful of the United States and to be wondering why we want to have a war with them, we can see how she got to that viewpoint, right?
Yes, I felt her genuine fear, and she really felt that we wanted war and that we didn't want peace, and that notion was a scary notion to understand that that's genuinely how she felt. And I wanted to let her know that no, we don't want war. We don't want that with you. But there was a thick, wide gap there in terms of the understanding. And
Yeah. So tell us the story that you shared with me when we had a brief chat while we were discussing this episode. You had a formative English teacher.
yes, I had, leading up to it, I think it was that same year, an English teacher who had a wonderful impact on me. And I'm hoping that the other students in the class too. She had us write in a journal every day, 7 days a week throughout the entire school year. Anything that we wanted. It could be creative writing. It could be reflections, observations. And that practice of reflection and processing my thoughts, I think, really helped me process that experience in Russia and helped me kind of understand my own kind of internal world and thought processes. So that was very helpful. And that kind of led up to something else that happened in this story a little bit later.
Well, that's a cliffhanger that we are going to want to go to right now. What else happened in the story?
Okay. Well, the following year, my next English teacher, had some great English teachers, asked the class to write a letter to the editor of the Baltimore Sun about, I'm originally from Maryland, about something that we cared about. And I reflected on that experience in Russia, the exact experience in the Bolshoi, and I wrote something about if only we could build understanding outside of the influence of the media and governments, we could develop new levels of peace and understanding. And I was very happy that it was the only letter to the editor of the class published, and it reached an audience. A few days later, my father called me and he said, "There's someone on the phone," which was quite odd for a young middle-aged middle school student to receive a call. I didn't receive calls from any strangers. I picked up the phone and this person asked, "Are you David Santulli?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Why are you so naive? Why do you want, the Russians want war with us. They want to destroy us." And then he went on to share some choice words, which I can't repeat. And it was quite scary. He was very aggressive, very forceful, very angry. And I can't remember whether he hung up first or I did, but afterwards I was stunned. I felt like I was dangling between these two worlds of misunderstanding that desperately needed a bridge.
That's very poetic. Dangling between these two worlds of misunderstanding that desperately needed a bridge. I see the antecedents of United Planet being the seeds being planted in the soil.
Worst in.
Right there.
Worst in the soil.
Yeah. I mean, a couple of things. It's a really big deal to have a letter published in the newspaper at any point, but we couldn't self-publish in those days. So to have, there's no blogs, right? So to have your letter published like that is really monumental. And then to experience firsthand some feedback from readers, namely an unhinged reader who somehow figured out how to track down a middle school student from reading something in the paper, where we're talking there was phone books with yellow pages. I mean, that took some effort. So I'm wondering, did you feel emboldened? Did you feel emboldened that your voice, your pen, your activism could cause this type of reaction?
I was very surprised that it caused that kind of reaction. So I think it made me aware of how powerful our voices can be. And it made me aware of the deep-seated sentiments that people have. And I was very surprised that he had basically the same sentiments that she had, the same fears, the same concerns about the Russian people as they had of us. So it did build all that kind of awareness and made a major impact on me.
Yeah, it's so fortuitous that your school afforded you the opportunity to go to Russia and Uzbekistan, and that you were able to actually interact with someone in an unscripted exchange like that, which caused you to see mirror images of this othering, right? That the propaganda is always teaching us that the other people are evil and they don't want what we want and their humanity is lacking, right? And usually governments have agendas. And sometimes the people support these agendas and sometimes they don't because we're not monoliths. And I think it's really interesting. I think we both try to help youth find their place in the world. You did it by creating, for about a quarter century, a thriving nonprofit that focuses on experiential learning with volunteer service in 40 countries. Your organization generated at least 2 million hours of service impact, and that's not counting the ripple effects, which are the whole magic of impact. I try to help young people figure out what they're good at and find a way to make a living doing something that they consider an impactful career for them. So when you think at it from that lens and how this hit you as a young person, what did it teach you about your skills as a thinker, a writer, a politically aware person? And what I'm getting at is, how did it shift your sense of emerging identity?
Well, I grew up in the suburbs of Baltimore. So for me, it was this extraordinary experience to see another part of the world. And after seeing different parts of the world, Uzbekistan, and we actually passed through Finland and Russia, I realized how different the world was from how I imagined it, that the only way to truly understand is to go there and experience it for yourself. So it planted that seed, that yearning to see more of the world. And I also realized, well, when it's not possible to go, just talking to the people from those places also makes a huge difference. Building understanding, having tea or coffee, or getting together with friends. And I was fortunate to have some wonderful international friends growing up too, and learned a lot about their cultures. So all of that, I think, helped build an awareness, a bit of a global kind of awareness and interest to learn more of the world. And as I learned more of the world, I also started to understand some of the issues that our world faced. Growing up in the time when there was such a fear of a nuclear holocaust, and all of that really drove home the need to build peace and understanding among people. And I realized when I traveled how much we share in common as people, our hopes and our dreams. And yet we have these perceptions of each other simply because we don't have enough contact. And we're hearing about each other through the media or other sources. But when it comes down to it, if we can just bring people together, they will all begin to understand our common humanity, appreciate the differences that we have as strengths rather than something to fear. So I think that type of awareness started to grow within me after these early experiences.
That's a beautiful share. And I think we both had the gift of these transformations that were hatched in us through teachers. And I like to do just a quick shout out to two teachers that really influenced me when I went to high school at the Dana Hall School, which is in Wellesley, Massachusetts. My last 2 years of high school. I actually went to 3 high schools, and that was the one I graduated from. And I had these two teachers. I had Mr. John Schuler, who just passed away in 2025, and Nikki DeCouteau. And Mr. Schuler encouraged me to get involved with Mayor Kevin White's reelection campaign and leave my dorm and get on the T and ride in there and make placards and make signs and stand outside and contribute. And Nikki DeCouteau agreed to be the faculty advisor for founding the Political Club, which I founded. And then when I graduated, she created the Political Awareness Award. And she gave me a world atlas, which I still have. as the first recipient of that award. And not to be braggadocious, but I guess I am being braggadocious. But the point I'd like to make is that it seeded in me my career coaching individuals around the world to make the impact they care about. It ignited my view of impact. And as a 17-year-old, they validated my ability to use my voice and my pen to advocate for the world, which meant so much to me and transformed the trajectory of my life. So I think the takeaway that Dave and I are both suggesting to anyone listening to this episode is that you are in charge of your identity. And you can shift it. You can step into the identity that you want to have to make the change that you want to see. All right, so we have a lot to cover. So your journey...
Beautiful story,
Go
by
ahead.
the way. A beautiful, beautiful story that you shared.
Thank you so much. I feel the same way about yours. The journey to Founder for you was not immediate. We have you graduate from college. There's about a decade or so where you work as a CPA for PricewaterhouseCoopers. And then very excitingly, you go to, not to say accounting isn't exciting, shout out to accountants, but then you go to Japan where you live for about 8 years and you become a founder of a trading company focused on the youth market. And because I want to get to United Planet and some other things, I will say that you come to a point where you make two decisions. You decide to travel the world with your wife, and you decide to return to the U.S. So, Dave, tell us a little bit about that period in your life.
Well, after leaving my work with Pricewaterhouse, I did travel for about a year on my own
Ooh.
as a budget traveler and met a Japanese friend and ended up having a Japanese family invite me to live with them for about 6 months.
Wow.
Started to learn the language, fell in love with the culture, and decided to start a business there, which I continued for 9 years. And then met my wife while traveling in Prague, which is where
Ooh.
my father's side of the family is from. My father's side is from Italy. So travel has led to a lot of wonderful things in my life. And so, we had this long distance relationship between Tokyo and Boston. And we ended up, as you mentioned, doing a little more traveling together. And eventually I decided to come back to Boston to start a new life. And I reflected back on my life and realized it was those international friendships, the international experiences that had enriched my life beyond measure.
Mm-hmm.
And I also remember doing some writing about the importance of peace and understanding in the world, and then kind of looking at my writing and thinking, who am I to just wish for this? We all do a lot of wishing for peace and understanding, but we also need to start standing up and trying to do something about it. And I think that was the early impetus, the reflection on the writing and my thoughts, and then the realization that, well, if we're wishing for peace, nothing's going to really happen unless at least some of us start to try to do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
Not solely expect the government or other people to take care of it. So that was the early inspiration. And early on, I just started with 1 or 2 small projects. There was no organization. It was just starting with some simple projects to try to build some momentum. And that's kind of how that got started.
Interesting. So I love how you use journaling and reflection to create your own sense of urgency for action. And when we chatted, I think you shared with me two of the questions that you posed to yourself, which if I may share them because I think they're so useful to anyone who is thinking about having more impact. So I think the first one was along the lines of, who am I to write about and wish for peace without doing anything about it? And what else can I do? I work with a lot of founders, and I just want to say, as Dave's period of reflection right before his origin story, for founders, there's this moment in time where your vision starts to cement. You feel this sense of urgency, but things are still sort of abstract. You're trying to figure things out. You feel like you're being called. You feel like you can't walk away from a certain recurring thought pattern. And I call this the moment of awakening to the transformation, because I see it again and again and again. So, anyone out there, if you are experiencing this type of rumbling, it means that you are onto something. You are onto something. You should keep going. You don't have to have it figured out yet, but you are being pulled to do something. And Dave and I both say, follow that feeling. All right. So let's get into the actual origin story of United Planet. So United Planet is one of the most successful organizations ever founded to work towards peace by creating global citizens. It was recognized by CNN when they did their Be the Change initiative. I am a board member of United Planet, and my exciting lapel pin, United Planet Beyond Borders, which has the fantastic logo of the encircled hands making a globe, hands around the world. And Dave is also the awardee from the White House of the President's Call to Service. United Planet has engaged 20,000 leaders and volunteers, but more if you count the ripple effects, built more than 250,000 cross-border relationships, contributed at least 2 million service hours, conservatively estimated, and advanced the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals in 40 countries. And to quote Dave, United Planet empowers global citizen leaders one relationship at a time through cross-cultural understanding and service that transforms lives and the world. So Dave, tell us what you consider your origin story for founding United Planet. Was there a moment when you knew what you had to do, and what was your first day like?
It's a great question. Well, after writing and reflecting, I decided to start a few projects, small projects. One was this opportunity called Voices of Earth, imagining if you could have a conversation with people from all the different countries and cultures of the world, creating that opportunity for people to learn directly from people in different countries. The other was actually this writing contest about the importance of intercultural understanding. And as I started these projects, I began to receive feedback, these incredibly inspirational stories from people in South Africa and France and Ireland, Northern Ireland, all over the world about the importance of intercultural understanding. And I myself became extremely inspired by reading this. And then when I reached out to people in Mongolia and Uzbekistan and all these places, they were very supportive, saying, we love what you're trying to do, building understanding of our country and culture through our voices. So after receiving this feedback, I began to think, well, what else can I do? And then thought of an idea, well, we're actually surrounded by people from different countries and communities, countries and cultures right within our own community. Why not bring some people into local schools and have them share about their cultures and countries, or even having people who have visited those countries go in and talk to local students. So these projects started to come together. And I remember reflecting on them and kind of reviewing these projects, and the words United Planet came to me. And I said, wow, this really does make sense. An organization that can take part in various initiatives to help build peace, understanding, stronger relationships among people. And from that point on, I said, after the idea came, I felt very convinced, very dedicated to pursuing the idea, and took the next steps from there.
I love that. That you took action in the direction of your dreams, and it built from there. And the counterparties to your actions helped you shape your mission and gave you validation and let you know that you were onto something that was viewed as mutually valuable, which is such an important arc.
Yes. And the thing is, so after starting it, then 9/11 occurred, and it just built the resolve even more and made it even more obvious about the work. And there were, even along the way, people who were questioning the mission and raising concerns, or these kind of naysayers. But I think all of that gave me even more resolve to continue on with the journey to build the organization.
I kind of want to follow up on that because I think we have a lot of people who are founding organizations, or it's a glimmer in their eye, and we want to steel them for when they start hearing the negatives. So the criticism that you got, how did you steel yourself to keep going?
Well, I think as a founder, sometimes you have an idea, you have a vision that's very clear. But when a lot of people look at what you're doing from the outside, they might not see that full picture. And they have doubts and they have questions, even people close to you, family members, etc. So it's really important to believe in yourself, to have that clear vision, strategy, get people to work together with others, and continue moving forward no matter what.
Continue moving forward no matter what. So, Dave, from your perspective, what is it that makes United Planet so special?
It's that logo. It's people working together. I truly believe that when we work together across our countries, across our cultures, anything is possible. And to me, that was the greatest joy, working with the team, our wonderful board members, our partners, our volunteers, the communities across the world, that we are each other's greatest strength, that we have all we need when we have each other, when we can work together, and when we do work together, that we can overcome any challenge that we face locally, globally. But when we don't work together, when we have fear, misunderstanding, even hatred, it's a very different world. So that was what gave me strength. Really, a lot of it came out of the joy of working with other people, learning about their cultures while doing important work. I feel very grateful for the opportunity I've had to work with so many wonderful people across the world. That by far has been the greatest joy of pursuing United Planet to me.
Beautiful. So, with 250,000 cross-border relationships built, that is a story of massive impact. But we all love those personal stories of impact. So, from your perspective, can you maybe share one or two stories of someone that came to you and said, you know what, United Planet really changed the course of my life, and here's why?
Yes, there's many, and I think of some of the volunteers that have gone to different countries. And I remember one volunteer who was in East Africa and had never explored a career in medicine, but had some exposure to the healthcare field and then decided to pursue a career in healthcare. I recall someone else who was able to work with students and with schools and decided to become a teacher. And on the virtual side, I recall some people who did virtual internships, and it was their first global experience working with organizations from Mali to Kenya to many different places. And that was actually the first time they actually, even though it was virtual, the first time that they had worked with others and even learned about the cultures virtually. So there are just so many, and it makes me really happy to hear some of those stories and learn about them, and just very grateful for everyone's dedication to participate and to make the most of their programs. And I think it opened up a pathway for a lot of people to become more engaged in their world, whether it's locally or globally. And I think that's one of the also the great benefits, where that seed of leadership and responsibility and agency to make a difference begins to sprout up a little bit.
Beautifully said. And, one vector of the United Planet mission is to create global citizens, which is really this concept that you just described, this self-concept of I am a leader in the world, I can have agency, and I can join with others in collective action for what I care about. And there are so many testimonials of personal stories on the UnitedPlanet.org website, so check that out. So you're a youth advisor, you're an active mentor, you're a leader, you're a teacher, you were adjunct professor at Northeastern University. And the focus of United Planet is really on this immersion in culture and experiencing service learning, project-based learning. So Dave, why is this type of learning so important for our world?
I like to think of this type of learning as almost full body learning. We're totally immersing in it through experience. All of us have an important chance, as we were talking about earlier, to learn in school and have wonderful teachers. But there's such a value to going out into the world, either actually going out physically to other places or engaging through virtual experiences and building that experience into your life so that you can apply what you learn in school, you can explore, you can get out of your comfort zone. One of our partners talks about leaning into discomfort, and that's when we grow. So stepping out of your comfort zone to experience new things. And I think it was John Dewey, one of the great educational philosophers of the past, who said, we don't learn from experience, we learn through reflecting on experience. So we can have these experiences, but if we don't reflect on them, then how much will we really learn? So that aspect of reflection is also very important. So overall, I think experiential learning is one of the most powerful tools for human development.
Absolutely. Experience and reflection together, hand in glove. So United Planet does a lot of things. It trains teachers, it offers corporate quests, it offers in-country service learning, it offers virtual, which was started up during the pandemic when that became a requirement. And as a board member since 2023, I had the pleasure of working with the fabulous Udo Sinogo, who is a wonderful contributor to the United Planet Mission and headed up Unite All Schools. And just to close out on this point about the experiential learning, so I was invited by Udo to watch some presentations where schools around the world joins learning circles. So one of the learning circles, I saw the final presentations. There was a classroom in Finland, a classroom in Uganda, and a classroom in Tanzania. And in Finland, they gave a presentation about social media and bullying. In Tanzania, they talked about planting mangrove forests, protecting mangrove forests to reduce shoreline erosion. And in Uganda, they talked about composting and planting trees to enrich the soil and minimize the effect of deforestation. And I've also seen presentations where slightly older students learned about impact investing, and students of all ages learned about storytelling with AI. So, can you share a little bit about how pursuing strategic partnerships with other organizations has enriched the programs of United Planet, looking at these very diverse and very topical programs like AI that I just described?
Absolutely. We've been so fortunate to work with companies, schools, secondary schools, universities, communities, other nonprofit organizations, civil society organizations from across the world. And I think the benefit is they have their own missions and communities. We have a wonderful partner, for example, in Iraq, in Syria, in all of the countries that we work. We have phenomenal partners. So we look at our alignment together and we try to, support each other as best we can. And they bring that local expertise, which is absolutely critical. So we learn so much from them. We learn from each other. We're able to reach more people through building those partnerships. Building a united planet is not something that just one organization can do alone. We need to work together with companies, with other civil society organizations, with schools, all sorts of people and organizations across the world.
Yeah. So one of the ways that you've done fundraising reflects that vision of it's a multi-constituency world, and we want to engage everyone. And you're very happy for donations of any kind. You get you're awarded grants. You have partnerships with entities like the State Department and these through these embassies, like you referenced with Iraq. And fundraising is a vexing challenge for any entrepreneur. So I'm thinking of a listener out there right now who's trying to bootstrap an NGO or an organization. She's running out of funds. She's exhausted. Some of her friends and family are telling her to give up. She still has her vision intact in her mind, but now she's starting to doubt her dream. And she's considering packing it in. So, Dave, what would you say to her?
Necessity breeds invention. It's those moments when the greatest ideas come and when the turnaround comes. Sometimes you need to be pushed to those places before you dig so deep that you find the solutions and find the resolve. So I would say keep pushing forward, keep exploring options, keep reaching out to others, come up with creative ideas, test them out. But most importantly, your mission is the most important thing, and the world needs your work. The world needs you and your mission. So keep the faith and keep moving forward.
The world needs you and your mission. Keep the faith and keep moving forward. We have to talk about those 283 countries and territories you've been to. Everyone is just dying to hear about that, I'm sure. So you're part of the Traveler Century Club. Talk to us about, you maybe had a year here or there where you're able to budget travel, as you mentioned, but you also ran a not-for-profit on, a relatively low salary that your funding was the priority, funding the organization and its mission. And you raised your family, and you and your wife and your two sons, I think, have been to over 100 countries. So how did you make it happen? And what was it like to travel like that? How has it enriched your life?
Wow, almost all the most wonderful things in my life have come from travel. United Planet, my family, so much of the learning. I guess my gratitude for being alive has come from being able to experience the world and see how beautiful it is, how diverse it is, how filled it is with unbelievable people. So my gratitude is really beyond words for the experiences I've had to see the world. And I've seen, obviously some of it on solo travels, a lot of it with my family, which has been wonderful, with partners, sometimes even within United Planet. So I do believe that travel is one of the greatest learning experiences we could ever have. And I've learned so much. I think my perspectives have expanded, but I've also realized that no one can see it all. And, even if you go to a place, it's just kind of like seeing the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more to see. You can spend a lifetime in each and every place and still not see it all. So it's been a wonderful opportunity to experience and gain some insights in different places and still remain curious, and still a lot of places to go and still a lot of places to return to. So definitely one lifetime isn't enough to see it all. But for anybody, I'd encourage you to go out there and explore the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to pick one place you went, and you can pick a different place and it'll be edited out and no one will ever know, just to hear about what that was like. So I'm going to pick Antarctica.
Okay. Well, it's a place where humanity really hasn't left its footprint yet. Totally untouched, shared among many countries, kind of a common heritage for all of us. So pristine, so majestic, very pure, incredibly beautiful.
Wow. That was a really good sensory trip. I feel like I left my chair there for a minute. And what does it sound like? Like, what do you hear when you're there in that kind of solitude and that kind of pristine? Is it really quiet or?
Yes, I had never experienced, when I was in Mali outside of Timbuktu with the Tuareg people, we went out on camels, and I had never experienced that kind of silence. It was almost like a ringing silence. It was so silent that my ears were ringing. They just weren't accustomed to this void of this lack of noise. So in some ways, when it's not windy, at least, and it's often windy in Antarctica, but when it's not windy, you hear that same kind of silence. When it is windy, you'll hear the wind and maybe the tents flapping in the wind. But you hear the sound of nature, which is beautiful.
And where were you headed with the Tuareg people when you were on a camel? Where were you going?
Just exploring the desert outside of Timbuktu and going for a little camel trek.
Amazing. I do want you to have a chance I want to get to the new things that you're building right now with members of your family, but I do want you to have a chance to just touch on maybe the key concept of relational diplomacy, which is a through line of your career, and is a beautiful way to look at peace building. So I highly recommend this book, but just share with us kind of like the 30,000 view, and then people can go read your book and learn more.
Sure. I guess I developed the idea during graduate school, meeting with peace builders in the Turkish side of Cyprus and the Greek side, and learned about some of their activities during a time when they had no physical access.
Mm-hmm.
What they did was bring together people around these areas of common interest, whether it was dance or poetry, these various areas, define those areas of common interest, build a rapport together, build a relationship, and then from there, hopefully tackle some of the more challenging issues that their communities faced. So that's the whole premise, finding the commonalities among people across our differences and building upon those, and then using those as kind of leverage and an opportunity to bring people closer together to then make progress towards things like the Sustainable Development Goals, or simply learning, cross-cultural learning as well.
Amazing. I had a chance to go to Cyprus with my youngest son, Robert, and we got to go to Paphos and Larnaca, but also we were in Nicosia and we saw the Green Line, and the mother of one of his friends took us there and explained to us, shout out to Tiano, about the conflict, and it was it's really important to learn these lessons about history and see it applied. Like some marshal took a green pencil and just drew a line, and that's the Green Line.
If I may, when I actually visited Nicosia in 2003, just after the Green Line had opened, while I was doing my research, and I remember talking to, on the Greek side, the person at the reception of the hotel, and he said, "Have a great day. So what are you doing today?" And I said, "Well, I'm actually going over to the Turkish side." And he was very startled, and he said, "Well, I wouldn't do that." He said, "They're going to kill you there." And I remember walking through the no man land between the area and these dilapidated buildings on either side, and I had that thought in my head, wow, are they going to, something terrible going to happen? And I went and met the people, and they were the kindest people I've ever met. We had tea, we had delicious food. And again, just another example of this fear that exists if we could just build those bridges of understanding and bring people together, maybe we could overcome some of those fears.
Yeah, the antidote to fear is love. And the foundation for love is understanding and being in community and building relationships. And my life has also been enriched with travel. I went to Taiwan with my oldest son, Charlie, who speaks Mandarin. And I recently traveled a lot with my middle son, Malcolm. I referenced the trip with my youngest son, Robert. And I went by myself, solo travel, to give a speech in Dubai. And it has built so much empathy and understanding as I hear about the U.S. and Israel's war against Iran, because I went to Dubai, I stayed overnight in Dubai, but then I went about an hour's drive outside of Dubai to Jebel Ali, which is on the coast of the Persian Gulf. And it is where the ninth largest military naval port is in the world, and where the entire fleet is. And I stood there in the evening under the moonlight on the beach with all the naval ships right there giving this keynote. And so when you think about, well, that's just on the other side of the world, that's just over there, we don't need to worry about that. Those are just people, they're just people like us all over the world. And we got to find ways to build peace. We've got to find ways to come together. So let's switch gears. Let's talk about your current projects that you're working on with your son, Tristan. And if you can talk a little bit about the story in your founder's letter. I read it last night and brought tears to my eyes.
Well, where to begin? I think I've been blessed to have an incredible father. I think I have to credit almost everything that I've done to him. Without him, I don't think I could have done any of this without his support. And he's 95 and grew up in Connecticut. My family immigrated from into the U.S. from Italy. And he has all these amazing stories that he's shared throughout my entire life. And one of my biggest fears was not capturing those stories, was having him leave us without having those stories, some of those stories stay back with us, not just in our memories, which can fade, but maybe through video or audio, this type of thing. So my son, Tristan, and I developed this idea for a project called CherishFamily.com, which is a global family storytelling platform that enables all families to capture the stories of their loved ones, and so that future generations can listen and hear them. And I'm also hoping it will help preserve stories from certain generations that might be lost, that we have so much to learn from each other, and maybe even from diverse cultures that are fading as well, that it could be a way to help preserve those cultures and those voices, particularly of elders, but of all people. So anyone can share, from younger people to older. There's a family tree within the platform, but you don't need to use the family tree. And there's also a special memorial section to honor loved ones who are no longer with us, and the family can come together for that. So it was a way, I think, of helping to celebrate the stories within our family. But as we were doing that, we realized, well, perhaps this could be helpful to other families. And we wanted to also help other families preserve their stories and memories.
Yeah, I mean, the name of it says it all, Cherish Family. So that's your family as your first experience of community, the power of community, the power of people that see the best in you, want the best for you. I'm also blessed. My father just turned 95 in March. And
happy birthday to him.
Thank you. And he and my mom were huge influences in my life. I encourage everyone to go to CherishFamily.com, and I actually encourage you to read the founder's letter that is written by Dave and Tristan. And Dave talks about his father after he lost his wife. Dave lost his mother at a very young age. I can't imagine what that's like. And Dave's father got off work early every day and went and picked him up at school and brought him his sandwich in case he's hungry, which I think is like the most beautiful thing you can ever do as a parent, is that constancy. that dependability and reliability. And just so salute out to my own father and mother, and to Dave's, and to Dave's, the mother that he never knew, but honors. So, Dave, we always close with what brings you hope?
All of us working together to build a better world, and all of us believing in ourselves, keeping the faith, and working together. That gives me hope. If we do that, I truly believe anything's possible.
Anything is possible. So when you read that founder's letter on cherishfamily.com, Dave refers to himself as an anachronism. And I got to challenge that. I agree with everything that Dave said in this episode, except that. And here's why. Dave is exactly what we need right now. So his life story shows that the dreamers that are willing to dream the impossible dreams and take action to make them happen are what we need right now. So ask yourself, as Dave has said, what can I do? And what else can I do? And maybe it's not your destiny to captain a global not-for-profit for a quarter century, but remember this: every impact matters. There's no such thing as a small or big impact. There's just impacts. And the magical thing about impacts is they birth ripple effects that go far beyond you. So write in your journal today, as Dave does, because the through line through this conversation is the power of journaling and reflection. And let yourself dream those impossible dreams. And then take your first step and get started. And don't give up when it gets tough. So thank you to Dave Santulli for always believing that a more peaceful world is possible, and for taking action every day to make it so. Your impact is massive. Your legacy is peace through understanding. Your pen, your voice, your leadership, and your belief in the goodness of people and humanity have had a ripple effect for over 2 million hours of service impact that we know about, and countless more hours birthed. And your new mission says it all in the title, Cherish Family. You're a gifted storyteller and a cherished friend. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you so much, Katy. Thanks for all you do to help empower people and build a better world. Thank you.
Thank you.